So good morning and welcome to everybody. I'm Felicitas, and this morning we'll take a short dive into the world of platforms and ecosystems. Sulin will join us later when we have our interview session. So first off, let's do a poll, right? In the last 2 weeks, which of the following have you used? Choose all that apply. So let's wait for a while to see what the results are like. So for me, definitely Facebook. I'm not the era of Instagram, so Facebook is my thing. And I look a lot at also the LinkedIn, basically to check out who's been checking me out as well. Yeah. And then of course, the Zoom, yeah, that's a part of our everyday routine in terms of our work. Okay, so the responses are still coming in. Wow, WhatsApp and WeChat seems to be topping the charts. Okay, I think we'll stop this here, and then let's take a look at the results, right? So WeChat and WhatsApp, yeah, these are the high scorers. The rest of them are quite even. GrabFood and Foodpanda, Facebook and Instagram, all the chatting and the communications part of things. And interestingly, right, a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, when we did another webinar, the statistics were actually quite different. Yeah, hot on the charts then was actually all the shopping stuff. Many people were doing online shopping. So it has dropped down a little bit already. Okay, so why this particular poll? So for all of us, we are very familiar, right? So because we download all of this onto our apps and then we use them, right? So these polls behind the apps, there is something that's even larger and bigger. And that is where we talk about the platforms businesses. So all of these are platform businesses. So what do they have in common? So basically, what are the attributes? Now, I'm going to use the example of Carousell. And you can use anything, and this will still apply, right? So the attributes, Carousell is basically a classified ad marketplace. So you and I are the likely people who will be using Carousell. So we can be the consumers, meaning to say that we will buy things on Carousell, or we could be the producers, people who will sell their things on Carousell. So if you're like a Marie Kondo, right, like to clean up your place, you may find a lot of things, and you may say, let's make some money out of it, I'll sell it on Carousell. Now, the interesting thing is, consumer today, I may be the producer tomorrow. I buy now, tomorrow I sell something else. And all of this is done within the context of Carousell. So there's search, there's matching, and there's a transaction. But of course, you need some things to make this happen, right? So first of all, it's the interface, right? So what do you use? Your phone, or maybe your PC or your notebook, etc., to do all these things. There are other activities that are required. First of all, as the seller, you must register, then you can list. And then as the buyer, you need to access, browse, select, then you make a payment, right? Once you've confirmed it, and then the delivery, right? The physical movements of the goods, the delivery, and all the collection. And finally, when everything is done, right, you have a review. So you give your feedback, was it good experience, not good experience? Yeah, the seller was as what he said that the goods were. So, and you've gotten it already. Now, in addition, every platform usually has what we call advertisers, third-party advertisers. And they will advertise on the platform. Basically, is a revenue stream for the owner, in this case, which is Carousell. So this model actually applies to most of your platforms, which are businesses, right? The business model of a platform. So Is there anything else that's important? Well, obviously, when you do transactions or on a platform, you don't see the other person. Trust is an important element. So you want to know at least that the people who come to buy and to sell are bona fide. That means they're real people, who are genuine in what they want to do on the platform. So in order to achieve this, there's a form of governance on the platform that's required. So what's governance? Basically, if you look at it in simplistic terms, it's basically the policies and the rules by which your platform will operate. So for example, if you're 18 and below, you need some parental consent, or parental supervision, right? What happens, right? You cannot sell illegal goods on the platform. So these are the things that, as the platform owner, they have to take care of. So we talk about value capture, right? In order to capture some value from the platform and you are able to monetize it, basically you must create the value. And on this sort of platform, the value creation really is between the producer and the consumer. I can find what I'm looking for, right? That's the value creation. Now, there are other things that on the platform, subscriptions, other platforms have subscriptions and you charge for the subscription listings, you charge for the advertisements, you charge also for the transactions when the transaction is successfully done. Okay, so Carousell is a little bit different. Between you and I, they don't really have a transaction cost and they don't charge you for listing or buying on their platform. So this is Carousell's approach to the consumer-to-consumer market. But most importantly, for the platform owner is data. When you transact across their platform, they will be able to capture data. And the data is of value because that is where they use the data to tune their platform to meet your customer needs. All right, let's take, for example, now that you understand a little bit about what the platform is, let's take an example of fair price online, right? You can have fair price online, you can have cold storage online. Yeah, there's also an online buying, just like Redmart is online buying. But what is the key difference? Well, the key difference is this, right? Fair price, you can buy online, but in Redmart, what they allow you to do is if you're a supplier, you can go to Redmart and say, I want to list my produce on Redmart and sell it. And you determine at what price you want to sell. Whereas in fair price is a typical traditional retailer. They basically control everything and they are the front for everything. Yeah. So not all platforms, even, not all e-commerce is actually a platform. So there's a difference to these things. So in a platform business, right, brick and mortar examples that we may have, they are not really new. And in fact, in ancient times, you have the bazaars, etc. And they are all also platform businesses. So you have wet markets, malls, food courts, like in today's context, right? So a wet market, like any market, functions just like a platform, right? Because you have the space and then you have all the stalls inside and then you have the consumers like us that go to the market to buy things. And then someone runs the place, it's owned likely by the government, but someone runs it like the town council. And then each of the stallholders there may likely have to pay some fee for the rental of the place and the use of the place. They pay some extra fees for the cleaning, etc., right? So, but it is the place where people come together and there's an exchange that takes place. So what about our digital platforms, right? Digital platforms, the earliest trace back was when the internet started in 1990. So for the digital platform, the first platforms that really came out at that point in time, they were e-commerce, but they weren't really the platform, we had Amazon and eBay, both started in 1996. Today's context, of course, our technologies are much more advanced. You must have the internet, right? And then you have your mobile technology, right? That makes it really easy. And then we have other things like the cloud services, right? So cloud services, whether it's storage, software, platforms as you use in the cloud, you also have data and analytics. And that's where you collect your data, you have your machine learning, you have your algorithms, you have your recommendation engines. So if you think about Apple, all right, the Apple Store has thousands of developers. And because of that, they are able to be innovative because developers will develop new apps all the time, right? And it's scalable, it can grow, And hopefully you have a large enough customer base, right? Now, and of course, brand awareness. So just now when we did the quick poll, right? All of these are brand names that we are very, very part of our everyday lives now. So they are really ubiquitous. So if you want to have a simple definition of what's a platform business, basically it's a business model that creates value by facilitating exchange between two parties, usually the producers and your consumers, right? And you have markets and communities created out of these producers and consumers. Now, a very important characteristic we see is the network effect. What does that mean? So as you add one new consumer or one new producer, right, the value to the rest of the existing pool increases. And what is, over time, right, when it reaches a certain size, basically it takes off on its own, right? And that's what we call the flywheel effect. So for example, like Facebook, it took them about 4 years before they managed this effect and the momentum grew. So they don't have to worry about acquiring new users on the platform. So platform is a very generic word, and some people say on the stage it's also a platform. That's true, that's one definition of it. But for our purpose of a platform business model, let me just take you through some of these, right? So on the left, you have Lazada, eBay, and these are what we call your e-commerce marketplaces. Then you go to Foodpanda, Grab, and GoGoVan. What are these? These are on-demand services, right? Kickstarter, YouTube, and TripAdvisor, these are what we call crowdsourcing platforms. We saw Patreon and Binance are primarily fintech platforms. Your Microsoft, Android, iOS are your computing platforms that you can build things on it. Your Outbrain, Bitly, the short URL, Google AdSense, these are all advertising content platforms. Then we have got Zoom, WebEx, and this is our video conferencing platforms. Yeah. Now I put in two items inside there. One is Google Search. Now Google Search basically is, but some people call it a platform, but in essence, it's a search utility. And then on the left side, you have Amazon Web Services, Azure, Twilio, right? These are what we consider as technology platforms. In reality, they are not your business model platform. These are technologies whereby you will build your businesses on those technologies. There was an article that was published right in Business Times earlier this year in January about capturing rewards of platform business models. It sounds extremely attractive, right? So what are the benefits and the rewards that you can capture? Well, if you have a platform, a business model, you likely will have a lot of innovation that you have on your platform. Yeah, your returns, you have different means of revenue streams that will come into you. Yeah, your top line will be good. Yeah, whether the bottom line will be good, it's another story. But at least you've got a good top line. You've got innovation, you've got branding. But just a word of caution, right? Business model platforms are not easy to come about, and it will take some time before they stabilize, as we can see right all across. Yeah. Okay. So what are the options? So if you already have a platform, that's fantastic. So you learn how to grow the platform. But if you don't, should you be considering a platform strategy for your company and organization? Well, there are three: you buy, you build, or you participate. Buying and building means that you have to have some deep pockets, right? Or else you've got to go and find money to do these things, right? Buy and build. So the easier option usually is to participate first. So if you have a product, you put it onto Lazada, you put it onto Amazon, and test out what is it like? What's the experience like to participate into a platform before you decide and say, well, maybe the way to go is I want to build my own platform eventually. Okay, so now let's go into ecosystems. So every platform basically has an ecosystem, right? It operates within the context. But we have multiple ecosystems, and we have some ecosystems that are very large. So I use an analogy of nature, right, and the universe. So, we have a rainforest, that may be one platform, and that was one ecosystem where we exist. And then you have deserts, you have got coral reefs, they're all ecosystems, all under our planet. But as we grow bigger and bigger and we extend out, right, we actually have the whole universe. So in analogy, right, for us in ecosystems, we can look at the whole world as part of our ecosystem as well. So if you think about very large companies like Amazon, which I consider as conglomerate digital businesses, they've got so many businesses, right, that they have created environment around themselves, yeah, the ecosystem around themselves. So other examples that you will see are from China, right, Tencent ecosystem, right, they are very similar to Amazon. So they have a whole slew, right, of different types and different elements in their Tencent ecosystem. You have got the social media, music, games, transport, online, offline. You have supermarkets, you have got commercial property, financial services, e-wallets, and e-commerce. So very similar, right, if you do a match for match. Another one is PingAn, right? PingAn is an insurance, but they are participated in many different ecosystems. They have identified 5 in which they want to play in. So let me give an example of the health ecosystem. So in the health ecosystem, PingAn is insurance. They have gone into financial services as well. But in this ecosystem, they have partnered, right? Basically the medical side, the hospitals, the doctors. But interestingly, you look at it, they've got fitness and beauty care. So they have extended their arms out into other domain areas already. So if we look at our own DBS, they are now playing in the 4 different marketplaces: property, travel, cars, electricity. Yeah, so it makes sense, right? Because as a bank, you buy, you need a loan, you pay back your loan. Travel, you need insurance. Cars, you also have a loan, etc. So why do they do this? They have a good set of data, right? As a first data point, they have their own data, but you know, they want to get other aspects of the customer. So what he buys, where he travels to. So basically, they're also collecting all this information. So in time to come, DBS is poised also to go into other ecosystems as well. So what are some of the attributes of our ecosystems? Well, it's number one, it's really a complex web. If you just look within the platform and its ecosystem, it's small. But once we cross, right, boundaries, right, it becomes very complex. And we have many companies in which we have to depend upon. No one company is able to fulfill all the needs of a particular customer. Well, you can keep buying like the way Amazon does, or you know, the Alibaba does, but you know, at some point in time, you still have to rely on other people. Okay, so the key characteristic is very close partnerships. You want to choose your partners carefully, who you want to work with, and they must also believe in the vision and the goals of the ecosystem. Okay, the customer is always key, right? So the customer, what does he want? That's what you need to find out, right? And you can only do this, right, and create ecosystems and orchestrate an ecosystem provided you have sufficient customer data. So if you don't have, you partner. If it's still not enough, you go and buy data. And at the center of it is the orchestrator. So it can be usually a very large company with some platforms already in place. So what about partnerships? So if you take a look at the statistics, right, average ecosystem has 27 partners. A successful one requires about 40. Amazon, for its e-retail alone, has got 67. So there's a great sort of partnership and collaboration that goes on to make it successful. If you want to be a partner, you need to bring something to the table as well. Okay, so McKinsey basically in his research, and this is often quoted, there are 12 different ecosystems, right, that will kind of surface or arise in time to come and will replace our traditional industries, right? A lot of money is involved. Just to give you some idea, today we have got automobiles and insurance, right, using telemetrics. How you drive will determine how much insurance you pay. You also got health and insurance. Yeah, John Hancock now no longer does what you call traditional life insurance. Instead, they say they tie up with Fitbit and with Apple, right, to monitor your activity levels, and it's called dynamic virtual insurance. So depending on how fit you are, what's your health status, that's why, then they charge you accordingly. In hotels and transport, in healthcare and transport, right? So say hotels and transport. So Hyatt, in its own app, has got a link to Uber for you to book your cabs. Yeah, so we see that there is merging and this crossing of domains and ecosystems already. So some points for consideration, right? If you have no platform, then you think about it, should you be looking into a platform strategy? But if you have a platform already, how can you expand your ecosystem to reach out to other places? Yeah. So do you have the necessary skills, which is also very important for your company and as an individual? So I wouldn't be complete if I didn't touch about this, right? So for us in ISS, we have many different courses. And later in the afternoon, we're talking about one of the PCPs on designing and managing products and platforms, right? I'll leave it to then later for my colleague to talk about it. Okay, so now let's welcome Sulin.
Hello, Val. Morning.
Hi, Sulin. Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, let me congratulate Carousell. Today is your 8th anniversary.
Thank you. It's quite a milestone for us. We are very proud to be a Singapore startup and doing our part in this ecosystem that is Singapore.
Thank you, Sulin. And also, by the way, so Carousell is also a startup that was incubated in NUS itself. So, Sulin, maybe you give us a little bit information or background about what you do, right, as the Chief of Staff and Vice President of Operations in Carousell.
Yeah, so it's a dual portfolio. For Chief of Staff, I make sure that I work with the management team and the rest of the company to make sure that our operating systems is smooth and we're operating as efficiently and as productively as we can be. As VP of Operations, I take care of the trust matters that you spoke about, the customer service issues that you spoke about, and the quality of listings on our marketplace. So quite a difference in portfolios.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, so all right, so back to today's topic, right? So we're talking about ecosystems. Could you help us to understand, right, what are the ecosystem of Carousell?
Okay, I'm just gonna project my screen so that it's easier for us to visualize. I wonder if you are looking, are you seeing what I'm projecting?
Yes, yes, we can see it.
Okay, so I thought you covered it really well earlier, Val. I was so impressed. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, but you talked a bit about our user base, and our user base is the core and the heart and soul of Carousell. So the difference between us and e-commerce players that you named a little bit earlier, like Lazada and Shopee, is that we have loads of casual users like you and I who are selling our stuff, right? But then merchants are common. So we have businesses who are on our platform as well, similar to e-commerce websites. Beyond the users, we have our investors. Because Carousell is a startup, we rely on our investor partners to fund the business, right? We also partner advertisers, shipping partners, payment partners, brands. Beyond that, we have three other stakeholders that sometimes people don't think about very often. One is the authorities, so we work very closely with some of the government authorities to make sure that our platform is healthy. For example, Singapore Police Force, some of the ministries, health sciences authorities. We also partner with the media, the Straits Times, the Business Times, to help educate the marketplace on safe practices, right? Lastly, we partner the government. So we try and be a good consultative partner because the e-commerce marketplace is evolving and we're all helping to shape the new rules of play for the years to come.
Okay, so thank you. So that's quite a handful of different ecosystem players you have inside there. And for us, typically, we just look at buyer and seller because we are the buyers and the sellers, right? So thanks for giving us that information. So if we take it a step further, during this COVID time, right, how has Carousell supported, your different players in your ecosystem, right, in terms of helping them to, some initiatives to help them? Could you sort of tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so I'm going to skip a slide and go to two examples. So COVID was in a very interesting period in our 8 years of existence. And two big things, two big phenomena we saw. One was a huge spike in profiteering sellers, people who are selling COVID-related health items. I think that they were quite, some people saw it as an opportunity to make a quick buck. The other phenomena we saw was fraud, right? So the fraudsters, the scammers, as it were, are very in tune with trends, and they were very quick to jump on the fear, and they preyed on the fear of the community because there was a fear of supply being insufficient to go around in terms of COVID health items. So I'm gonna trying to go to the next slide. Hang on. So this, what you see on the screen, was a partnership that we worked with the Ministry of Trade and Industry to tackle opportunistic sellers. So we do a lot of education to tell our sellers that this is not the time, this is the time to be a good member, responsible member of the community, and don't take advantage of buyers who need the products that you have, right? The other partnership was with Singapore Police Force. And this in particular was tackling scammers. So we had loads of banners, advertising across our app and our website to tell people that when you're purchasing public health items during this period, be careful to make sure that you look at ratings and reviews, choose the right sellers, right? Because there are many people out there preying on your fears. So do you realize the communication has the logos of Singapore Police Force? Because we think that it lends weight to the messaging that we're putting out. In fact, the picture on the lower right shows you that the SDF were quite pleased with our cooperation as they have been in the past years, and they've even given us some recognition.
Okay, so that's an interesting sort of initiative. I think it really helped us during COVID, right? So at least for the normal person, we're not so worried that we couldn't find masks or they were exorbitantly priced. So based on these initiatives that you all took, what was the outcome? You know, do you have any like numbers or statistics to share with us how these initiatives performed for the COVID time?
So I will particularly talk about the fraud, the scam issue that you're looking on screen. So if you look at my screen now, one of the interesting attributes that Carousell has is the flagging system. So our community, our users are very passionate about keeping the community and each other safe. So we actually ask them to flag out to us if they see suspicious actors on the marketplace. So you'll see the number of flags that we received from quarter to quarter, starting from last year to quarter 2 of this year, which is the most recent quarter. The number of flags that we've been receiving has, exponentially increased, right? That means there are potentially bad actors in the midst, right? But because of the work that we do with Singapore Police Force, with our investment in technology, both in-house and third party, we are trying to investigate each and every one of the flags as quickly as possible, right? Using manual and automation means to push down the actual incidence of people getting defrauded, right? So there was a peak indeed, as you would imagine, at the height of it was in February. But over time, we've managed to bring down the number of fraud cases in every 10,000 transactions, that's our key metric, to what it was before COVID. So we're all pretty pleased that the efforts have paid off.
Okay, so do you use this, right, on the platform for other things, the other buys and sells on the platform?
What do you mean by these?
The flagging of
yes,
fraudulent buyers and sellers.
Yeah, so you can flag out to us a variety of things. So for example, if you see counterfeit items or listings that you believe are counterfeit, you can also tell us. For example, if you see a lot of like keyword stuffing, people are putting a lot of keywords in their listings and it's not relevant, we call it irrelevant keywords, you can also tell us. If you see all kinds of funny behavior, duplicates and all that, you can also tell us. And we actually make the effort to go through each of the flags that the community gives us, and we close them out within 24 hours. The sooner we close them out, the safer our community is.
So this is information that's provided by the users of Carousell, right?
That's right. So they are a community ecosystem, a key ecosystem partner to us.
I see. Okay, but what about Carousell itself? Do they have algorithms that will run through everything and filter it out?
Yes, so we do invest. We are a technology company after all. So first and foremost, we use technology to solve problems because you can do it at scale and at speed, right? At high speed. So we do have, for example, keyword monitoring, where we try and pick out trending keywords that are being used. So, and we automatically then flag out the listings. We either completely suspend them or we will investigate them further. We hide them first, then we will investigate further. So we use both in-house technologies as well as third-party technologies in order to get ahead of all these issues.
Okay, so thanks for sharing the real-life example of how technology is used, right, to do some of these things. Okay, so, when we're talking about the ecosystems, right, and branching out and going further than the platform itself, right, what's Carousell's thinking on this? How are we going to expand out to other industries, other places, go beyond what you currently have?
what we see ourselves as, always constantly evolving in the value that we bring to our users, both the sellers and the buyers. So I think what we want to do is to leverage on technology, as I mentioned, to move from classifieds version 3.0, which is mobile classifieds, into 4.0, which very much leverages on things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to help the buying and selling become more seamless, become faster. So our value proposition used to be snap, list, sell in 30 seconds. We have this dream that we will be, our users will be able to snap, list, sell in 3 seconds in time to come because of technologies, image recognition and translating that into data, things like that. But I think more than that, we're also trying to move away from just being a platform that buyers and sellers meet into the transactional space. So I think we want to participate in the transaction instead of just availing a platform for people to meet. We want to facilitate and make sure magic moments happen. So magic moments are the points where buyers and sellers actually transact, right? So we want to make sure that we have a hand to make more magic moments happen. And we do that by providing services to increase convenience, to increase trust. Right. So these are the new things that we are already starting to do since a couple of years back, and we will do more of it in the years to come.
Okay, thanks, Sulin, for that. Now, is there any other thing that you want to sort of like share with us about, Carousell and its journey in terms of how you have actually engaged your other partners or your buyers and sellers, right? Because I know Carousell also has not just C2C, but you also have the B2C element, right? And recently, I recall there was something about cars and properties, etc., right? So it's an approach of how you approach them different, right? For B2C versus C2C.
Yes, I think at the heart of it all, and you made reference to it a little bit earlier in your slide, that in an ecosystem, for an ecosystem to be sustainable and really win-win, you have to believe in each other's core value proposition, right? And for Carousell, our mission is quite clear. We want to inspire every person in the world to start selling and buying so that you can make more possible for one another. So because, many of us are perhaps we need something, but we may not be able to afford it, right? Or we really want to try a new piece of technology, but it's too expensive. So we want to look to our neighbors, our friends, our relatives who have access to these things, and perhaps they're not using them. They're just lying in their garage or their storeroom, and we want to look to them to be our supplier, right? So that is fundamentally our value proposition, and it is about a more sustainable way of living for the longer term, because it is not about buying new all the time, but having a circular economy. So even the way we approach sellers, we are constantly inspiring our casual sellers to think about things that they are not using anymore and passing it on to the next person, right? So in terms of merchants, our core merchants are the small businesses, people perhaps in the refurbished business and all that. So at the core of it all, right? But because they are also helping the circular economy, right? But today, secondhand buying is not exactly front and center in everybody's mind. I think Asians still have a bit of reluctance sometimes to think about using secondhand. So we also invite merchants selling new products to come in, because first of all, we want to make sure Carousell becomes a destination for buying and selling. And we keep introducing this sustainable way of living along the way, right? So over time, we want to change preferences, and we want to make secondhand the first choice in many years to come. That's the vision.
Okay, so thank you so much, Sulin, for that input. All right, so let's go to our Q&A now. So we have a question on the Q&A. Let me do this first. How does Carousell do quality assurance on the seller's products and services? It's a lot and it's growing, right? You are getting more and more of this on your website. So how do you ensure that it's good stuff, right, that you are buying and selling on Carousell?
Yeah. So as a classified marketplace, I think a lot of the responsibility lies with the actual sellers and buyers also, because your definition of good and my definition of good may not exactly match, right? So I think we provide the means for people to give a full description fair, hopefully very transparent description of their products. And then we also have this very interesting system called ratings and reviews that started since day one. And this is a way that, will compel people to do the right thing and do good things, right? So that they collect good ratings and reviews, which will then benefit their future listings being sold through, right? So there are mechanisms in place. Carousell as a player does not actually go in and check every single one of the listings to verify the exact state, because as I said, it's subjective, right? But we do certain things like, for example, we have the manual moderation system and the algos to catch prohibited items, to catch counterfeits as much as we can. And we work in partnership with the authorities and brands to do some of these things.
So, the reviews, right, that are given, I mean, I understand the reviews that you give to your seller. Do you have reviews?
We don't give the sellers, by the way.
Huh?
We don't give the sellers the reviews. So the buyers who actually successfully transact give the reviews. So the platform just avails the mechanism.
What about the other way, from the seller to the buyer?
It's the same thing, yeah. So the sellers are also permitted to give reviews to the buyers. So because, the buyers equally have a hand in a pleasant transaction experience. So I think we also want the sellers to give us signals, to other sellers in future, whether or not they want to sell to this particular buyer, right? So it is a very powerful mechanism for people to make informed decisions.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's take another question. How do you get more people to use your platform in the initial stage?
It is, Carousell is, like I said, started in Singapore 8 years ago. And one of the things we've learned is to create a great product, right? As long as you create a great product, as long as you're really solving people's problems, we believe that consumers will use, those core segments of users will use your product. And if you give them a good experience, like I said, magic moments, magical experiences, we use the word magic a lot in our sphere. If you give them a lot of positive experiences, they will help us be evangelizing our proposition by telling their mothers, their friends. In fact, many of our users today are not the young folks that we had in the early years. It's their mothers, it's their aunties and uncles. And today, Carousell is used by 1 in 4 Singaporeans on a monthly basis, and 1 in 2 actually have accounts on our marketplace. Right? So we don't do a lot of marketing, as it were, compared to e-commerce players. A lot of it is more organic and word of mouth.
Do you see that Carousell has many competitors? Because there are a lot of e-commerce platforms and marketplaces and all, right? So who do you see as Carousell's key competitors in this?
Yeah, so in as far as competing for buyers' mindshare and buyers' wallet, we are competing with e-commerce players, right? But fundamentally, we don't see ourselves as an e-commerce player. As you rightly mentioned earlier, we are a C2C player mainly, and much of the transactions actually don't go through us. They meet the buyers and sellers. They meet outside. You will see Carousell meetups are common sight all over Singapore and MRT stations especially. So we are quite different from e-commerce players. We see ourselves more like the Craigslist of the world, the Gumtrees of the world. So classified players and e-commerce players are very, very different.
Okay. All right. Let me see if there's anything else like we should speak about.
I just wanted to call out and say, Daryl Spikerman, thank you for your support. We are grateful for it over the years.
Okay, a buyer and seller on the platform. All right. So I think let's close our Q&A. And Sulin, I'd like to thank you for the time that you have spent with us this morning, and enjoy your Carousell Day, your anniversary. We wish you all the best, right? And many more for Carousell.
Thank you so much for the support and for the opportunity to speak today.